From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Sitting in tonight, Diane Sawyer.
Good evening. In the Mideast, every word of hope has to be modified with words like possibly, perhaps, and maybe. But tonight, there are hints that Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir may be ready to join his Arab neighbors in a regional peace conference. It would be the first since the State of Israel was formed in 1948. Secretary of State Baker left Israel this morning urging Mr. Shamir to seize what he called this moment of historic opportunity. ABC's Dean Reynolds reports that the pressure on Mr. Shamir to say yes is intense.
Sources tell ABC News that when Secretary Baker and Prime Minister Shamir met for their second discussion in as many days, Baker made a very strong impression, telling Shamir of a revolutionary change in Syrian thinking and assuring him that he has nothing to lose by saying yes. That, and Shamir's fear of appearing to be the lone obstacle to progress, is, according to sources, moving him toward accepting the American formula for Arab-Israeli peace talks.
We share a common objective with the United States: peace, a comprehensive peace.
Baker insisted he is not pressuring the Israelis.
We will, for now, wait with great hope for the response from Prime Minister Shamir and his colleagues.
And Shamir may well be able to resist right-wing opposition to compromise here because the Israeli Knesset recesses for 2 months on Wednesday, removing the threat of the government collapsing on a vote of no confidence. One major issue yet to be solved is who will represent Palestinians at the peace talks. The Israelis want a veto on Palestinian negotiators. They would rule out PLO supporters and Palestinians living in East Jerusalem. Talking to them, say the Israelis, would imply that their capital is part of the negotiation. Baker met PLO supporters from East Jerusalem yesterday. Today, they said the Israeli position is unacceptable.
The question of Palestinian representation is an intrinsic and independent Palestinian decision.
No talks will start without Palestinians from Jerusalem.
Baker has impressed all sides here with his determination not to be sidetracked, and he left several staff members behind to see that the process he started keeps moving. In fact, Baker made it clear to the Israelis that he would like a positive answer in time for the Bush-Gorbachev summit in Moscow later this month. That would enable the two presidents to announce agreement on a Mideast peace conference, which they would sponsor starting this October. Dean Reynolds, ABC News, Jerusalem.
In Washington today, more tough language about Iraq. The State Department charged again that Saddam Hussein, in the department's words, hasn't come clean yet about his nuclear weapons program. Officials also say that the fighting appears to have stopped in northern Iraq after serious clashes last week between Kurdish rebels and the Iraqi army. At this point, the rebels control the major city in the region. ABC's Jim Bitterman reports from Sulaymaniyah.
Government officials took journalists on the trip to the Kurdish provincial capital to prove that after 2 days of fighting and hundreds of casualties, things were back to normal. But in the convoy along the way, normal was not a word that came to mind. Beginning 60 miles away from the town, an armed escort became necessary. And along both sides of the road, an unbroken string of tanks, pillboxes, and checkpoints. Then a mile from town and just beyond the headquarters of an Iraqi Army Corps, the soldiers would follow no further. In the streets of the city, armed Kurdish guerrillas were in complete control, having chased the army out, and apparently after several thousand soldiers were taken prisoner or deserted. The Kurdish rebels surrounded the office of the provincial governor general. He claimed he was still in charge.
We are nearby the border from Iran, so they came from there. And this is not the first time.
But it was clear the Iraqi army had fired directly into the city. Abdullah Hassam's house took a hit from a phosphorus round which narrowly missed his children in the next room. A neighbor said no one wants the army to come back anymore.
All Iraqi army actions.
All Iraqi arms. The 2 days of fighting left Kurdish guerrillas clearly in charge of their provincial capital with the weapons to control it. For now, the Iraqi army, which is massed all around the city, is making no moves to take it back. But the rebels won and then lost this city once before in the bloody battles last March that started a stampede of Kurds seeking refuge in Iran and Turkey. It could all happen again, or the Iraqi army may heed warnings from the Allies not to intervene this time. Jim Bitterman, ABC News, Sulaymaniyah, Iraq.
In London today, new evidence connecting Middle East terrorists to the international banking empire called BCCI. Earlier this month, Britain, the U.S., and many other nations shut down BCCI's operations, charging, among other things, that the people who ran it stole hundreds of millions and perhaps billions of dollars. Now, Britain's political leaders are being asked why something wasn't done sooner. Here's ABC's Pierre Salinger.
The BCCI has now been identified as the most corrupt bank in history. And today, the scandal shook the British House of Commons.
They need to know which ministers knew what, when they knew it, and what action they took.
The right honourable gentleman asked for an inquiry. He has got an inquiry. All documents, all officials, all ministers will cooperate with that inquiry. Nothing will be hidden.
Prime Minister John Major and his government are being accused of having ignored information received last year indicating bank officials were stealing money and making fraudulent loans. Major was Chancellor of the Exchequer with power over the banking industry when the government first received reports of fraud in the BCCI. It is now clear that the BCCI was involved in many international scandals. Here are two examples. A BCCI account in London was used to finance terrorists. The account was opened under the name of Samir Hassan Najmuddin, an Iraqi arms dealer close to Saddam Hussein. The bank gave Najmuddin a $29 million credit line. Both British intelligence and East German intelligence report that Najmuddin was financing the terrorist Abu Nidal. An East German intelligence document obtained by ABC News also claims Najmuddin helped finance the terrorist Ahmed Jibril, implicated in the bombing of Pan Am 103. Second, ABC News has obtained documents indicating that a BCCI account in Monte Carlo was used to funnel $6 million during the Iran-Contra scandal. The account was in the name of Manisher Ghorbanifar, the Iranian who was the middleman in the attempt to trade arms to Iran in return for the release of American hostages. Other well-known names involved in BCCI include the former Panamanian dictator Manuel Noriega, the Saudi arms dealer Adnan Khashoggi, and the former Philippine president Ferdinand Marcos. The big losers in the scandal are the innocent investors who deposited their money in BCCI and are not likely to get it back. In Hong Kong, where the BCCI was shut down, account holders rioted in the streets. And in London, both depositors and former BCCI employees gathered in front of the High Court in protest. At this point, the biggest investigation into the BCCI is going on here in England. But with new disclosures emerging, there will be pressure for a widespread investigation into BCCI connections in the United States. Pierre Salinger, ABC News, London.
In a moment, new accusations from the prosecutor in the alleged rape at the Kennedy estate. Los Angeles Police Chief Daryl Gates says he'll call it quits next year. And a romance with the ugly duckling of the open road.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Lanacane Cream.
Oh, this itch. I can't sleep.
Lanacane will stop it fast.
Lanacane will. Lanacane shuts off the itch like a switch, fast. Only Lanacane cream works on contact with the itch nerves that cause every itch. Benadryl can't. Cordaid can't. Hydrocortisones can't. But Lanacane will. So for the fastest relief of every itch, get Lanacane.
Lanacane does shut off the itch. Like a switch. Fast.
Good luck up there today.
I'll need it.
What's wrong?
What if my diarrhea comes back?
Relax. You took my Imodium AD caplets.
Just one dose. I usually take the pink stuff 2 or 3 times.
Imodium AD is much better.
Imodium AD caplets are so effective, they often work in one dose, instead of dose after dose after dose like the pink stuff.
Hello? Hi, hon. I feel great.
Imodium AD for diarrhea, the choice for one-dose relief.
A new development today in the case of William Smith, the young man accused of raping a woman last Easter at the Kennedy family compound in Palm Beach, Florida. Prosecutors have filed court papers claiming that Smith raped a woman several years ago in Washington, D.C. and attempted 2 other rapes. Here's ABC's Bob Jameson.
The new allegations against William Smith surfaced when Florida prosecutors filed a list of additional witnesses who might testify in his trial on charges he raped a Palm Beach woman Easter weekend. Smith pleaded not guilty to the charges May 31st, and prosecutors believe Smith's attorneys may attempt to make the woman's sexual history an issue in the case. Today's court filing names a Washington woman who accuses Smith of sexual battery, the legal term in Florida for rape, in 1988. 2 other women are named in the documents, one from New York who accused Smith of attempted sexual battery in 1983, and one from Washington who accused Smith of attempted sexual battery in 1988. Harvard law professor Arthur Miller.
This case is going to turn on who do you believe. If the prosecution can show that he's got a proclivity